what I started thinking is I want to make some kind of like a learning series that kind of touches on all the kind of relevant subjects to become like a good chess player, except for tactics, because tactics is covered very well through other tools like puzzles. So something that I liked about chess structures is that it was kind of like an encyclopedic coverage of one angle, right? The angle is, if there is a pawn structure, you do this. What I wanted to do for Chess Imbalances is to take the same approach, cover everything, but from a different lens.
Hi everyone, Stepan here. Today I'm going to talk about Chess Imbalances, the new book by Mauricio Flores Rios. In my opinion, an incredible book on the middle game that everyone should use. So you're going to hear my interview with Grandmaster Flores Rios. I'm also going to show you one of my favorite examples from the book, excuse me. But first I'm going to give you my brief review. You can read the full review, it's in the description below. So Chess Imbalances is the second book by GM Flores Rios. His first book, Chess Structures, has over time become one of my favorite chess books, and it deals with 28 most common pawn structures. Chess Imbalances is structured in exactly the same way, and then it covers the most common material imbalances in chess, in the middle game and in the end game. It's very easy to follow. That's the first thing I would like to say. Even though the topic of the book is advanced, and that's, it's not a simple strategy book. It doesn't deal with, open files and diagonals and color complexes on a very basic level. It deals with something very advanced. Grasping the meaning and the importance of each imbalance is advanced. Despite that, he managed to present the material in a way that's easily understandable to players, regardless of their level. So that's the first very important point. The second point is, every game in the book and each chapter and each imbalance is accompanied by instructive games, has been chosen based on two factors. The first one, how instructive it is, and how thematic for the imbalance, for that pattern. So the game examples from the book may seem absurdly thematic, even, and you may be thinking, I'm never going to get that in a game. That might be true, but that's what makes the book good. They are very easy to follow, and they illustrate what he's trying to teach very well. The second criteria on which the games were chosen was their beauty and how flashy they were. So there are many beautiful examples. He's been writing the book for 9 years, and you can see that. Now, what do I like most about this? The way each chapter is written and the way each game is presented. So first of all, the book is divided into two families of imbalances: balanced imbalances and material imbalances. By balanced, he means when material is equal, when neither side has sacrificed or lost material, and that includes bishop versus knight, opposite colored bishops, rook against two minor pieces, and so on. And the second family are positions where one side is down material, either voluntarily or by losing material, so sacrifices of all kinds, including queen sacrifices. In the beginning, there is a chapter in which he covers the basics, explains very, very simple concepts like piece values for the queen, for comparing bishops and knights and so on. That's very helpful for beginner players. But what's helpful for everyone is that each chapter begins with a brief overview of the most important concepts. So for example, the chapter on bishop against knight will cover when knights are superior to bishops and vice versa, which is very important. And it's covered in very, very simple steps. For example, the bishop tends to be superior when the position is open, there is active play on both flanks, there are pawn majorities on opposite flanks, or even better, a pawn race. So the basic concepts are explained in the beginning of each chapter. The second thing that I really love about the book are the learning objectives and the final remarks that accompany each game. So take, for example, the game Carl Centauri, in which Flores Rios says about the learning objectives. This game is a canonical example of a strong knight dominating a bad bishop. The game and its variations cover a wide range of ideas and positions, including middle games and endings, zugzwangs, and checkmate attacks. So each game, in the introduction to each game, he tells you what you have to pay attention to. And as for the final remarks, they sound something like this. Although the position was an objective draw throughout most of the analysis, the reader should realize how one-sided the roles were. White was comfortably playing for a win without any risk, with black having to find the balance between passive and active defense, and so on and so on. Hi everyone, Stepan here. It's my pleasure to introduce Mauricio Flores Rios, one of my favorite chess authors, and we're going to talk about his new book, Chess Imbalances. Welcome, Mauricio.
Hi, thank you.
Tell us about the book. They heard my opinion.
Okay, yes. Well, I mean, let me first look at how the book came about, right? So I published Chess Structures in 2015, and the initial reaction was very positive. I received a lot of emails from players, kind of even like some high-profile players. I wasn't expecting that at all. Like I remember back in 2016, and Nashi Paikidze reached out and said, "Okay, wow, this book is looking very good." I mean, she was like just crowned the U.S. champion at the time, so I was like, "Okay, very surprising." But anyway, so I really wanted to consider other books, and a lot of people suggested, how about just write more structures, right? Kind of like a Chess Structures Part 2. But what I started thinking is I want to make some kind of like a learning series that kind of touches on all the kind of relevant subjects to become like a good chess player, except for tactics, because tactics is covered very well through other tools like puzzles. So something that I liked about Chess Structures is that it was kind of like an encyclopedic coverage of one angle, right? The angle is, if there is a pawn structure, you do this. What I wanted to do for Chess Imbalances is to take the same approach, cover everything, but from a different lens. In this case, it's the material imbalance that we have in the position. So the goal here is to teach you, okay, if you have a bishop pair, this is how you play. If you're playing knight against bishop or bishop against knight, this is how you play, right? So, and then if you want to do a pawn sacrifice, these will be situations in which it would be justified. And in these situations, it would not be justified, right? And the same for exchange sacrifices and even some positional queen sacrifices, which are not very common, but they are very nice to see when they work.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's how the book came about.
Okay. Was it harder to write it compared to structures, because it's not as general? You cannot define the rules as well. What I struggle to explain when I'm trying to explain chess to someone else, when it comes to imbalances or piece play, it's very hard to verbalize rules, because very often they don't apply. Very often they get in the way of each other. Did you struggle with that?
Yes, I think I think from a visual point of view, even from like a technical quality point of view, I think this book is of a significantly higher quality than Chess Structures. I really love the game selection, because I kind of remember from the previous example, like there were some examples that I wrote about and then I felt like it were not that good, and then I could never get rid of them after the book was published. So this time I invested a lot more time. I mean, even though it was an insane amount of time, this time it was an even more insane amount of time searching for really good games. Well, I mean, I wrote the book over a 9-year period while doing other things. But basically, every time that some big tournament happens, I would look through the games, and if I found something, I would save it, and I would be like, okay, this is gonna go into this chapter. So sometimes I would be stuck on a certain chapter for a long time. For example, the queen sacrifices. I don't have like an amazing queen sacrifice until this Farusha Kartikeyan game came around. I think 2019 perhaps. I was like, okay, this is the game that I was missing. It's finally out. Now I can write it. But yeah, I mean, so anyway, it took an insane amount of time for that reason. But I'm very happy with the game selection. I think there's a lot of games that are very, very beautiful. But as you said, it's hard to verbalize some things. I think that the reader will not necessarily come away with like a sentence that they can memorize, except for a few examples. I think in the bishop pair chapter, there are some very clear sentences that you can just use. For other chapters, I think it's more about having some intuition. I think actually the exchange sacrifice chapter, to be honest, I think there's two families, right? In this book, there is like what I call balanced imbalances that are like knight versus bishop. Nobody's up material. There's no concept of compensation. It's just like a difference. Those chapters are significantly more difficult. The most difficult chapter is the opposite color bishop. That requires to develop an insane amount of intuition, because all of the examples that I show are wins. Because I mean, we know that those are drawish. I'm not going to show you draws. I'm here to show you that it's not always a draw, and there's a lot of winning chances, and this is all the different ways in which you could have an advantage. And I think that you can develop a lot of intuition. So, for example, I play a lot online. I win a lot of opposite color bishop positions because when I play fast games, I have all this intuition, so I can leverage that. And my opponent is playing against time pressure, so they just don't have time to come up with ways to neutralize all the ideas or all the tricks that exist. But then I think the core concept that I try to introduce and nail across all the different chapters is how to justify compensation. All the different factors that can give you compensation. Like, a lot of people think about piece coordination and tactical reasons, but there is a lot of reasons that have to do with, let's say, the health of your pawn structure, whether you have a mobile pawn mass, whether your opponent has a plan or not. There are some examples in the book where you sacrifice an exchange and there's like nothing that obvious, but it's just your opponent doesn't have any plan.
Yeah.
Foreseeably doesn't have a plan, so you can just keep annoying them, and eventually they'll just lose, because it's like you can make progress and they can't. Right?
Yeah, there was one example in the book has 30 problems in the end. That's another question I had, and sorry for interrupting you. I just remembered the problem with rook c4. I'm going to find it. The solution was rook c4. I don't remember who played it. Give me a second.
Skalica.
Yes, Skalichka versus Damian Reka, the rook c4.
Yes.
That's a good example. It's not sacrifice. It's not...
it's basically you take it and you accept the sacrifice, and next move you have to resign. There's nothing to do.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about the problems at the end of the book in general. Usually when you go through a tactics book, let's say, or one of Agard's workbooks, you don't get such clear instructions about what you should be looking for, and then they could be tough to solve. However, when you read your chess structures or chess imbalances, as I have gone through chess imbalances in the past week, you look at so many positions that the problems are easy.
It's sort of true, because I try to organize them on a theme. So it's like, if you remember the theme, you can be like, okay, I got it.
Yeah, that's it. There was one of your games where you took the knight on a8 to get the light square diagonal. What's I'm going to find the game.
Yes.
Your game against
my game against Madnatze. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I remember that it was yesterday morning. I was looking at the position and I went, oh, knight a8. And had I not read the book, it probably would have taken me, 10 minutes to go through everything and think about that. So what's your view on problem difficulty in books that cover very, very specific themes, as is the case here? How do you... I always struggle to work hard when solving them. They just seem too easy.
Well, I mean, that's good, actually, right? But I think the goal here is to nail down the same points that we've been kind of emphasizing. So it's like a way to check your understanding, right? So I think that if you find the problem easy, it means you understood the sort of core ideas that we're kind of trying to communicate. But yeah, I try to make these puzzles conceptual. So I am not trying to test your calculation. The idea here is that you are able to look at a position and understand the core idea correctly. Kind of like, okay, this plan works and this one doesn't, or this is good compensation or this is not. That's the goal. So maybe if you understood, it will be instant. You will be able to solve it without thinking because you understood. But if you didn't understand, you can calculate for a long time and you will not be able to solve it.
Yeah. You wrote in the introduction that you try to choose games that are, the most obvious examples of the concepts you're trying to present. And I think that's a great thing, and probably the only way to write a book that covers these topics efficiently. But how do you think players with lesser experience than yours would deal with situations that aren't typical after reading this? I read a book by Vasilios Kotronias on Petrosian's exchange sacrifices. And then I play my own game, and it's never that clear. It's never that simple. I maybe, but maybe not. Maybe, I've never had a game where I could have played Rook C4 like in a Skalitska game. I've never
of course.
Yeah. So
there's a little bit of two things. Number one is, I think if as you kind of improve your understanding and you know what sacrifices are killer sacrifices, they will happen more frequently because you will be aiming for them way before they happen. It's like you're kind of like I'm sure in this Kalika game, the guy was thinking about Rook C4 for like 10 moves. He was kind of like setting up the groundwork so that someday in the future this will work, right? But then the other thing is like, if you understand these sacrifices well, I mean, it doesn't have to be a winning sacrifice. The fact that you know that this is a resource, it's like, it kind of just expands your repertoire of ideas. So one of the things that I think is very useful from the book is like, if you understand all the different positional sacrifices, it becomes significantly easier to survive lost positions because you can convert a lost, you hang a tactic and you can convert it to like some fake compensation. I have done that a lot in my career, right? It's like a save lost positions just because I knew how to make it look like a sacrifice, even though everyone knew that it wasn't intentional.
Okay, let's talk about the target audience. I have a feeling that imbalances are tailored for slightly stronger players than structures. That might be because it's easier to verbalize points about structures because there are certain set rules, like when they play a6 in the Benoni, you play a4. That's simple to explain. So I think because of the topics you've covered, imbalances have turned out to be slightly more advanced. Is that true, or am I just imagining?
I think that's correct. Maybe like 100 points higher in rating. I still think it can appeal to a wide range of players, but I think if you are like in the lower end of that range, the book is 500 pages. Maybe you can kind of skip some of the annotations. The way that I try to structure this is like you can still kind of get all of the core concepts by just reading kind of the main line. But I know some people are curious. It's like, hey, you're saying that this is kind of winning. Show me how. So you can kind of look at the annotations and figure out where that is. But actually, I do think that accessibility is always kind of important. So I plan to record the kind of video version of this book soon. And when I do that, I will kind of intentionally make it more accessible precisely to address this concern, which is a very valid concern. It's like, hey, too many lines. Even though the way that I try to structure the lines, by the way, is when I write the annotations, I kind of write them over and over and over until I feel like each line kind of tells its own story, so to speak, right? So sometimes the lines are like somewhat like a mini game.
Yeah.
So you can think of it as like having many examples. It just like the line happened to be like the same root, but it's like a whole new idea, and it has a pretty diagram at the end. I try to kind of, for me, it's very important that the book is like visually pleasing. Yeah. So I try to kind of, when I go through the lines, I write them over and over until I find a line that not only wins, but wins in a cool way. It's like there's an insane amount of zugzwangs. If you notice in the book, it's like I keep finding lines until I find okay, this one ends in a zugzwang. This is cool.
Yeah, that's. I mean, the book is a weird, in my opinion, and I've been through so many books in the last few months, not reading all of them, but going through many, many. It has the best of both worlds. It has the introductions to each game and the conclusions to each game that explain what you should be looking at, and then in the conclusion, it reinforces what you learned. But it also has annotations and lines that sometimes resemble Dvoretsky's Endgame Manual. And you normally don't get that in the same book. So
Right.
I think it's unique in that respect.
I would reassure people that they can skip some of the lines safely and they will be fine. They'll still get the core ideas.
But I cannot do that.
You're curious.
It's not just that. It's just I have a problem that if I don't look at all the lines and don't set up all the lines, that I feel like I haven't read the book or finished the book, and I don't feel good. So I just go through all of them anyway. So for people like me, and I didn't go through all the games, as I told you, I went through, let's say, 30% of the games in the book because I thought I would make it in a week. I just didn't. It's too much. But it's well annotated, which is the most important thing for me. So you can put in as many lines as you want. If you describe them well, that's just an upside for me personally.
Right.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, how should a new reader use the book? Let's say someone gets the book today, they are 1700, they don't have a lot of experience reading chess books. What should they do?
Right, that is a very good question. I think the book is also arranged in a way that it can be read sort of sequentially, but I do think that the second half of the book is more fun. So, and I don't think that there is too much dependency between the first part and the second part. So, from a logical standpoint, it makes sense to have the balances first, but from an enjoyment point of view, I would recommend to start with the second half. And in the second half, we have like a chapter 1, which introduces some like preliminary concepts that show up everywhere, like the importance of having stability in your position, like how to organize a compensation by kind of having a position that is solid to begin with. Like, yeah, it's like if you have like a little fortress that nobody can invade, you can build compensation out of almost anything, right?
Yeah.
This is a concept that I try to emphasize over and over. And then after people understand that from the chapter 1, you can jump straight into pawn sacrifices and exchange sacrifices. And I think that those are the most fun chapters, in my opinion.
Okay. I mean, I enjoyed the book, and I think it's great. And my next question is related to that. There aren't many books like this one. Could you think of any books that have been entirely devoted to imbalances?
I think, learn from the legends. Even though it is structured in a way that it discusses players, some chapters are about imbalances. Like, for example, there is the Karpov chapter is entirely about opposite color bishops, right? And then I believe Petrosian chapter is about exchange sacrifices.
Yeah.
Rubinstein. And Tal chapter is about rook versus two pieces.
Yeah.
So it doesn't cover every chapter, but it does cover those three at least, and I think it does a very good job. And before writing my book, I actually read those chapters very carefully to make sure that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate the interview. I'm sure the viewers are going to appreciate your personal view on the book and a more objective opinion on the book in general than mine. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, thanks again.
No, thank you so much. It's been great having this discussion.
Now I'm going to show you one example that I really like. Okay, so this is the game between Mustafa Yilmaz and Nijat Mamedov, played in Antalya, Turkey, in 2013. He begins covering the game from this position. As a learning objective, he says, this game illustrates how a knight and bishop can defeat a rook and pawn by first fixing the pawn structure, then creating weaknesses and building pressure against them. Okay? So we begin in this position after 10 DE5. And Flores Rios says a more natural continuation would have been for white instead of DE5. E4, E takes D4, knight takes D4 with an open King's Indian position, which offers white a comfortable edge. Okay, however, DE5 was played, and after DE5 by black, white plays the move knight G5. And Flores Rios says this move marks the beginning of a questionable idea, which will take form with white's 13th move. Queen E7, knight C to E4, H6. Okay, now, white's idea was knight takes F7. This was white's plan, but the resulting exchange will be an unfavorable one. It would have been better for white to retreat the knight and settle for an equal position with knight takes F6 and so on. As it stands now, after queen takes F7, knight to D6, which is the tactical justification, queen E7, knight E8, white doesn't really have much. Okay, queen takes E8. And Flores Rios says, it's time to assess the position. Now, this is why I like chess imbalances. All the annotations were written in this way. White is slightly down on material, with rook and pawn versus two knights. Black should have no problem preventing an invasion down the open d-file, which means white's rooks shouldn't expect to become active anytime soon. Finally, white's extra pawn is on the king's side and can only be leveraged by advancing f to f4. I like this point very much, that he highlights when the extra pawn could potentially become useful, as it happened in the game. Unfortunately, the resulting pawn mass, e4, f4, will be more a weakness than a strength, as we will see. In view of these reasons, white is already in serious trouble and can realistically only aspire to draw after long and arduous defense. So, all the annotations go on. I'm not going to cover the entire game. Everything is well explained, and it goes deep into the end game. In the end, I'll just show you the final remarks. The game ended in this position where white resigned after knight e4. And Flores Rios says, this game should demonstrate how, in the long run, a rook without entry points is no match against two minor pieces. In spite of some inaccuracies, black was able to build decisive pressure time and again, always through simple maneuvers focused on attacking the fixed targets in white's camp. There are other final remarks, but they would be pointless without you having seen the entire game. So, in short, you get an introduction to the game in the form of learning objectives, and you get a conclusion in the form of final remarks. The annotations are detailed, which is, in my opinion, the most important part of any chess book. I don't want variations. I don't care about tangent lines. I want you to explain in words a human can understand why something is important and how I should learn that. And Flores Rios does that extremely well. What I can say is that if we're trying to compare chess structures and chess imbalances, he did everything that was good about chess structures in chess imbalances and put more of it inside the book. So in my opinion, this is a better book than chess structures. However, the topic is it's as useful, but you don't use it as frequently in actual play and in prep. So I love the book. I think it's a better book of a higher quality compared to pawn structures. But I still prefer pawn structures because I use it for almost every game.